Okay. Hi, hello everybody. Today we are launching our strategist panel discussion, and the agenda is IT investment funds in Eurasia. Let me introduce myself. Dilshod Zufarov. I'm a CEO of Uzbekistan Venture Capital Association. So with me as a speakers today we have Maria Barsuk, investors, and EBRD Technology Venture Capital team. Mr. Kheyraddin Mehdi Zada, Senior Engineer of the Department of Strategy Development of SOCAR, Azerbaijan. Mr. Ruslan Rakymbay, Investment Director at Quest Ventures, Kazakhstan. And Mr. Andrei Tikhomirov, partner at Kolos Ventures, Belarus. So our agenda is IT investment funds in Eurasia. So there is a different type of interaction of startups with investment funds. So IT investment market in Eurasia country is developing in, as I told, in different way. There is some countries where there is completely given this area to private entities, and there is other states where the government or state invest directly, and there is a direct interaction of state funds with startups and technological entrepreneurs. So my first question is to Maria. Maria, as a team member of EBRD Venture Capital, how do you think, which way is the best or most correct to interact with entrepreneurs, technological entrepreneurs, where state interact directly or the state gives more possibility to private entities?
Thank you, Dilshod. Well, you see, you almost answered my my question yourself, but the thing is like that. So startups, it's first of all, it's like entrepreneurs that want to be successful businessmen eventually and build and scale the technology and deliver it to the global markets, or at least to the local markets. And for them, the best way to source funding is actually from somebody who is also in the private markets, meaning that private investors are still kind of maybe better in a way for them because the private funds are also entrepreneurs in the way, and like when business is speaking to business, there is more like opportunities to grow, there is more opportunities to become successful business, because it's a very different notion what is like large state fund in general wants to achieve versus what a particular entrepreneur wants to achieve. However, in our markets, like where EBRD operates and so-called Eurasian markets, there's still lack of the standards, right? Of the standards of the private investing, which is very well developed in countries like US, but here it's still like relatively early stage of development of those standards. And the state can be like playing this role of establishing the standards and establishing of healthy conditions for the developing of the ecosystem, where the private investors and private entrepreneurs can work together and build the successful businesses. This is what I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. And I want to ask the same question for Ruslan. Ruslan, as I know, Quest Ventures is a private fund, but there is Kastage Ventures who invested, I think last year, to Quest Ventures as fund of funds. So you are working on Central Asian region. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about Quest Ventures, and then the question, how is which model is more effective?
Thank you, Dilshod. Greetings, everyone. Yes, my name is Ruslan Rakymbay, and I'm investment director for Quest Ventures. Quest Ventures is managing company. We manage funds. But as you mentioned, yes, we have one of our LPs here in Kazakhstan in Central Asia is Kastage Ventures, which is a subsidiary of a quasi-governmental fund by Terek, which means we have quasi-governmental money under the management, right? So I think that kind of a model when a government or government entity or national company or whatever you name it with government money, a part of as a regulator creating, as Maria mentioned, I totally agree that the government should create frameworks for players on VC arena and create additional incentive for funds to come in and invest into entrepreneurial ecosystem. We all know that government and government entities are very, very bad managers, but nonetheless they have the most money on the market in each country, right? So money is good, and when the government understands that private companies like Quest Ventures are better managers and they can select and create additional value to the ecosystem is the right way, I think. But nonetheless, in some Kazakhstan was also part of that journey when government officials decide that they are good managers and the only government need to manage the government money. And we already seen those unsuccessful launches when government officials try to be entrepreneurs or VC managers. In terms of that, we even Quest Ventures is Singapore-based HQ company. We manage funds here in Central Asia and in Singapore as well. And in Singapore, we also manage quasi-governmental money, because on other side of LP, we have Temasek. So it's a government-owned fund of funds, and it gives also framework to operate and mandate. So that kind of a collaboration, I think it's better to create the ecosystem. The managers and the funds should be run by entrepreneurs, should be run by professionals in the industry. But government needs to create and inject additional cash into the ecosystem. I think this is a good approach to create a proper and healthy ecosystem in any country.
Sure. So as I understand, you want to tell that government should stimulate the private investment development by by creating fund of funds, etc., and by giving under management the sources, state sources, like companies for you.
Well, this is I think we all see that kind of a pattern on developed markets, right? Because private entities will come when there will be enough incentives and frameworks to work on, right? So government need to do this first step, and by creating, injecting cash into the ecosystem and creating a healthy framework, understandable framework to the players, the government should make the first step, indeed. But when the framework and rules of the game are clear, private entities will come eventually.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruslan. The next word I would like to give to Andrei. Andrei, you as a partner at Kolos Ventures, Belarusian, and I know. So could you tell us a little bit about your VC fund? Do you have as LP government funds, or it's a totally private entities that you are you have under management? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me now? I'm just checking the quality of the sound.
It's
all right.
Okay.
Thanks very much again. Kolos Ventures is a purely private, fund. And Kolos Venture Management Company is the manager to the fund. The fund is in the making, so to say. Okay, we're about to hit the fundraising road starting the summer this year. In the meantime, we are making investments on the platform, on the investment club platform. So we have local investor base, mostly from Belarus, but also we have investors coming from Ukraine, sometimes from Russia, but mostly from those two countries that I mentioned first. And we're using those investors' money to sort of support our current deal pipeline, because we have a robust, very robust deal pipeline, and we don't want to lose those deals before the fund is sort of say up and running. It's going to be based in Cyprus. We chose Cyprus as the sort of domiciliation for our fund, place of domiciliation, and the fund is going to cover the entire region of the former Soviet Union, essentially excluding Russia. And Eurasia is basically also will be in the focus of our attention. Again, it's going to be purely private money, but we're also going to tap into the source, into the coffers of multinational financial institutions. We're already in the talks with the EBRD. It's not a secret. We're going to talk to other multinational financial agencies like IFC, and also supranational agencies like development banks. We think that at the end of the day, probably 50% of our funding will be from local sources, wealthy, high net worth individuals and family offices, and the rest will be from those multinational institutions that I mentioned. The part of the ecosystem that we're going to be targeting would be different subsectors of IT industry, starting from post-seed all the way to including seed round A stage. We're not going to go beyond that stage, because we think that's going to be our unique niche, which is the sort of the most, I would say, underfunded niche in the markets that we're talking about. Sometimes, angel can cover the specific capital needs of those entities up to, let's say, $500,000. And then institutional money will come in starting from, let's say, $3 million range. But then there are a lot of companies in between that are still looking for money, and very few of them have capacity to cross the death valley, as we call it. And that's where we want to help them out. When they are ready to leave their home base, so to say, go global. And that's why our money and our sort of value-added services will be coming in to help them.
Thank you, Andrei. And about the so in conclusion, do you think that state funds, in our topic is VC state funds, if they interact directly with entrepreneurship, with startups, do you think it will be a success story or not?
Definitely. I mean, it's unavoidable, let me put it this way. In some countries, you won't be able to find private money before the state money or public money comes into the play and take some risks out of the equation. That's what happened in Russia in the early 90s. That's what happened in Belarus, Ukraine before that, somewhat before that. And now it's happening, it's going to happen, inevitably going to happen. It's going to happen in the Eurasian countries. And it's only part of the story, obviously. Money is not only the thing that really drives the whole process. There should be also demand for services and products coming from the state. In some countries, the states adopted the digitalization policies like Kazakhstan, Georgia, and those policies drive the demand for product and services of nascent startups that are producing those services and products. Obviously, not every single product or service can be, let's say, marketed at this stage to the state because of the, let's say, underdevelopment of those state products and services, but they certainly can be suppliers to the big global companies. And that's what, again, the state can do by putting together the framework and laying down the rules for those big companies like, let's say, Google's or Microsoft or others, or telecom companies, to work with the local suppliers, including the IT companies, startup companies.
Thank you very much. Maria, I have a question for you. In 1994, the first time when in CIS countries, it was in Russia, the venture capital firms or funds were created. It was by the help of EBRD. In 1994, I think, if I remember, it was like $2 million of US dollars that EBRD allocated for as fund of funds to Russian venture capital funds.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were more than 10 VC funds and investment in private equity funds in Russia that were appeared. How do you think this model was successful, and can it be scaled on the other region of the Eurasia?
Well, actually, of course, like in 1994, probably there was some first initial investments in Russia, but since then there were a lot more eventually investments that have been done by equity fund team in EBRD, and there is hundreds of millions of dollars are now pouring into the ecosystem in the region. As was mentioned by Ruslan, by Andrei, when the private funds in the region are seeking for the money from the international financial institutions, and this model appeared to be quite successful, I have to say, mainly because even recent example of this Digital East, the fund from Earlybird, which was operating in Eastern Europe, and they have quite successful fund, and they operate across Eastern Europe, and they had this UiPath story, as you probably all heard about, this large IPO made by Romanian entrepreneurs. So basically, what happened is that Earlybird was one of the first investors in this company, and then later, and Earlybird was one of the funds who managed to raise funds from EBRD on this early stage fund facility, and eventually it became quite a big success, both for entrepreneurs and for the fund managers, and for EBRD as triggering it. So this model appears to be quite successful. I know that also European Investment Fund is also heavily invests right now in the funds in the region, but from what I see, mainly it's happening now closer to the western part of Eurasia, mainly Eastern Europe, former countries like Ukraine, Belarus, and it's moving towards Asia, and eventually it will happen in Central Asia as well, I believe. But this is something that is it's a good checkup in terms of the integrity of the fund managers, and also it's also usually quite a big checks of financing for such funds, and therefore it allows to develop ecosystem in a decent way, because there is also high standards that are provided by international financial institutions. I mean, in terms of the fund management, in terms of the agreements, established agreements, and etc., controls and best practices. So I think this is a very successful model.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. And the question that I want to ask about EBRD VC Capital, does this financial institution invest also as fund of funds to private management company like Quest Ventures or Kolos Ventures, or you are dealing your due diligence expertise in pipeline deal flow yourself, or you have your experience, or you have a mandate to invest on private management companies?
So EBRD, actually, we do have this equity funds team that invests in funds, and they cover all the types of the funds, including the private equity. I'm not part of this team. Our team does direct investments in the companies, and we have a mandate to invest in the companies that have the development R&D in the countries of our operation. It's 38 countries. It's Eastern Europe, mainly it's former Soviet Union, plus Eastern European countries like Poland, Romania, and the Balkans, and also some countries in the Middle East. I forgot to mention them, like Jordan and Lebanon, and also Turkey and Northern Africa. And so, yes, we work directly with entrepreneurs. Our team is relatively small. It's only 5 people. I'm very sorry. Our team is 5 people. And yes, we currently have a portfolio of 25 companies, and we co-invest with the funds. So basically, we kind of we do our own investments, but also we kind of bring other investors to the region and like make a joint investments with them. Yes. So
Thank you.
So I do direct investments.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is to Ruslan and Andrei. I will begin by Ruslan. So there is two big challenges for VC funds. The first is raise capital, funding, and the second is investing. So how do you think, Ruslan, which in your case, what is in Eurasian market, what is the best challenge, which is the objective, what is the fundraising from investors, from LPs, or finding a good projects to invest? What is a big challenge?
Well, both actually, because for instance, here in Kazakhstan and Central Asia, mostly VC industry is in some sort of embryonic state right now. There is some understanding of the industry and the need from the regulators that VC industry should be created, because it's a very valuable contribution to job creation in the future and innovation development and technology development, etc. And in generally, all the economy, it should be driven by SMEs, and without creating incentives for VCs to invest into the good and the promising startups, I think entrepreneurship will be less attractive for the citizens. And stating that it is on a very early in its development ecosystem, it is very hard to source proper well-developed startups, and of course to convince non-institutional investors to chip in into the funds, VC funds. It is also a challenge. But right now, the regulators, the officials, the players on financial markets, they now understand the whole that ecosystem needs to be created, and now it's easier to convince when you go and fundraise for a new fund, for instance. But still, it is a challenge, because our geographical location and all of those extractive industries are very traditional ones, and to convince them to go beyond traditional investing, it's very hard. So I think it's both. But for now, Kazakhstan is developing. We also taking a huge part in ecosystem development here. We run because we don't see proper accelerators on Central Asia, we decided to run our own. So we have Kazakhstan Digital Accelerator here. We invest, we will have like 4 or 5 runs with 10 startups in each run. The only accelerator who gives acceleration program with proper methodology, and adding to that $50,000 US on pre-seed investment to the participants of our Kazakhstan Digital Accelerator. So we are the only one who gives value in kind and value in cash for our stuff. Right now we have already 21 companies in our portfolio, and hopefully we will reach it to 50 by next 3 years.
Thank you, Ruslan. And Andrei, the same question for you. What is the main objective challenge for VC? Oh, you are on mute, Andrei.
If I am now, can you hear me now? Yeah.
It's okay.
If I am to rank those two issues, I would rank deal flow first. Ruslan did mention that, and I totally agree with everything he said about that. I just want to reiterate the deal flow would be the most important thing in the eyes of any investor that would be looking at the Eurasian market. The first question that people asking you when you approach them with your fundraising request is the question, hey, where are you going to put my money in? To which cause? I mean, show me the pipeline, show me the good pipeline and the cases, successful cases that people made money in this region. And this is the most difficult part, because sometimes you cannot answer those questions, especially on the exit side, because the markets are in a nascent state. And even if you can find a couple of deals in every single country, I mean, worth of your attention, there will be there will be zero exit experience in most of those countries, zero sort of at the international level. Yes, Belarus, Ukraine, and even Armenia, to very much everybody's surprise, produced companies that can call themselves unicorn or close to be unicorns. But in the country of Eurasia, that's not the case yet. They're just at the beginning of this journey. And it's impossible to raise the fund just on the premises of investing in one single country. So it should be a regional fund. And that's what we're trying to do and to pitch. In case of Kolos Venture Fund, we're pitching the fund for the whole region. What we're also selling is our experience to be able to find those diamonds in the rough, gems, so to say, uncut gems yet. To be maybe not unicorns, but at least the leaders in their market niches, in regional leaders, and hopefully even in international leaders. But in order to do that, we have to spread your bets and to go as wide as possible, as wide as possible. Then, of course, comes the question of the money. In some countries, it just are pure impossible to raise any money for venture capital type of deals. Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Belarus, they went on far away, far beyond beyond the horizon that other countries are able to reach. That's possible to find local money. But other than these 3 or 4 countries, your money sources will be exclusively outside of the region. And that's where multinational financial institutions, again, I want to reiterate that, state-owned agencies, this is the only source that can trigger this development, can kick this whole thing in the motion.
Thank you very much, Andrei, for your opinion. And I want to pass to the next topic about corporate accelerators or interaction of corporations with startups, with IT companies, like strategic investors or like development institutions. So we have Kheyraddin with us, which is senior engineer of the Department of Strategy Development of SOCAR, Azerbaijan. Kheyraddin, hi, hello. Could you tell us about the strategy of SOCAR, of the corporation, who want to maybe interact with IT companies, with startups as strategic investors, or what is your strategy of your company?
Before start, I want to thank you for having me here. SOCAR, together with the big 5 consulting company, create and SOCAR 2000 certified corporate strategy for SOCAR. And we finish that project and give it to the Azerbaijan Investment Holding for confirmation, so that after that we can able to imply that strategy into the SOCAR. And one of its main arm is venture capital. And so due to that reason, even SOCAR management had decided to put their efforts to creating that venture capital into the SOCAR. So as you see, we are new in this area. Due to that, besides that, SOCAR not just wanted just to create, and it's also want to make it more reliable for everyone to collaborate, for making, especially in oil and gas industry. And this means that we try to do the venture capital not just in oil and gas sphere. We just want to do in the energy transition of SOCAR, in the digitalization of SOCAR, in an energy different digitalization and other stuff, other low carbon and green energy sources and different of sources of SOCAR. And because of that, first, of course, SOCAR also want to focus on Industry 4.0 application, mobility, connectivity, technology, solar energy, and different other areas in the venture capital. And of course, we started it newly, so we are in the beginning, and even as a management of SOCAR, they in the future plan to invest in this area. But besides that, SOCAR slowly already investing into the innovation and startup by itself. And because of that, even in SOCAR, they were created an artificial intelligence of Aliyah, who's supporting the drilling sphere. And this kind of projects are mainly being made by different entities by itself with the support of SOCAR money. So with the creation of venture capital in SOCAR, we planned to put it together and directly manage it in the from main side and for all the entities, which means that after we started to do it with this, of course, supporting the SOCAR management and SOCAR money, or even in the future, maybe it will be government money, and we will want to improve it in all the spheres of the oil and gas industry.
Thank you very much, Kheyraddin. I want to talk. I propose to discuss about regional ecosystems. We can see that each country tried to develop and to form each own startup ecosystem, venture ecosystem, investment ecosystem. But there are other countries or regions that are building regional ecosystems. Maria, the question is for you. As I know, you don't have, EBRD VC don't have from Central Asia, for example, the portfolio in their investment portfolio, startups from Central Asia.
We don't.
What is the reason of this?
The reason is what has been mentioned by Andre. It's the deal flow from these countries is still very early, even though we are looking at this region very closely. And like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan is something that we look at very closely. But I have to say that we have an investment in Armenia, and it's a Pixart company. So far we just didn't find the opportunity that would be like big enough. But also our mandate, we invest from Series A and onwards. So we are a little bit later stage. So maybe there is at the moment, I guess there is a lot of seed round opportunities or pre-seed. Maybe there is some good teams, entrepreneurs that received a good like Western education, or like the ones that are trying to address millennial economy. But the stage-wise, Series E, it's like a Series A. It's when you already have a revenue, when you already have a traction, when you have a decent pipeline. If it's enterprise software, when you have a strong user base already, like even though at the beginning, if it's a B2C market. So therefore, like we just didn't find yet the opportunity, but we are looking, and maybe soon we will be able to say something about our first investment in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan.
Thank you. But you know, why I propose to discuss this topic is, for example, Andre told that Kolos Ventures invest mostly on CIS countries. Why CIS countries? Because it's Russian-speaking countries. So when investing, the team, as we know, we see he looks first of all on the team. When the project is scalable, global project, it's interesting. But to do a global project, you should know English language. International global language. So maybe my question is for maybe for Ruslan. Ruslan, how do you think the building global startups so that VCs like EBRD could have more deal flow from the region? The challenge of language. In Russian language, without knowing English language, I don't know if the founder of the project of IT company can do a global company. How do you think about it?
Well, I definitely agree that we seek founders to have ability to explain to our investors their project and pitch and sell to the clients globally. So English, it is a huge asset to the startup, to the founders, to the entrepreneurs. And we also see that there is still some founders maybe don't see that opportunity, or they don't have that plans to expand elsewhere, a part of Russian-speaking countries. But for instance, we already have 2 startups that we invested that expanding to US, expanding to Southeast Asia. We already have EBRD is a very good our partner in Southeast Asia, and hopefully we will have those co-investment deals here in Central Asia as well. We're already preparing a couple of startups that might be EBRD interested. But English for the founders, I think it's crucial in order to be able to sell their products and goods and services globally. But it can be outsourced, of course. But we try to, for instance, our acceleration program, Kazakhstan Digital Acceleration, everything is run in English. So everything who applies, we assume they know English, but we also face the challenges when sometimes we need to adjust our program and explain to the founders that they need to outsource or hire or get someone with the language expertise as well. So that's also an issue here in this region. But I see that I see the change actually. For the last 3-4 years, I had numerous of startups applying to even in Kazangels. I'm a co-founder of Kazangels Business Angels Club. We mainly seek and invest up to 500K USD into the startup. So it's a more co-financing round, syndicated. So we see that entrepreneurs are learning, and they see those investments as successful fundraising rounds for local entrepreneurs, and they see that a community now building, and everyone sees that English is actually a huge asset. And I know personally, I invested in 2 startups that the founder didn't knew any English before, because he didn't thought about it even to expand elsewhere. He thought like to be a CIS champion, it will be enough, but with our help, we give him insights of the other markets, and now he, in 1 year, he just learned English, and he's very good in pitching and selling his products and pitching to startups. So everything is a learning curve. An ecosystem in terms of language, they also need to pass some development in that sense. But English, yes, I totally agree. It's crucial to expand your product elsewhere.
So in your case, when you invest in non-English speaking startup founder, you invest also to his English language teaching lessons. So
yes, at least well, before deciding on investment, it's a long journey, right? It's some sort of marriage between investor and the founder. So in that sense, we have our dating, we have all of those flowers and perks and etc. before signing the contract. So in that sense, we see how the founder responds to our recommendations. If he listens and do proper adjustments in his business, in his way of running things, yes, this is a good sign, and English is one of them. Yes, we try to move them and give them idea that English it must have for the startup, because VC is not the SME deal, right? We try to build unicorns, and in Kazakhstan we actually also joined the unicorns Central Asian or Eurasian club. We have a unicorn. Yes, it's corporate, but still a very good story that Kaspi Bank is also gives back to the ecosystem and buys out some startups. So those deals are on place, and we see the exits for founders. So ecosystem now is slowly, but eventually we hope it will develop to the state when we can exit on unicorns every year, hopefully.
Thank you, Ruslan. And my question is to Andrei. Andrei, is on the same topic. You mentioned that Kolos Ventures invest mostly on Russian-speaking founders. No?
No, I didn't mention that. No, I didn't mention that. English-speaking founder is sort of like a given thing to me. I did mention that we are looking at the deals when the company is already at the post-seed stage. Okay, so it's like a given thing that they, by themselves, sort of came to the realization that they needed to go through some sort of acceleration program, boot camps, startup boot camps, and so on and so forth. And usually these are in English-speaking countries. They themselves apply to such acceleration programs in Europe, somewhere in Europe, or somewhere in the States, or in the MENA region. By the way, we didn't ever mention that region, but it's a great source of money and expertise, potentially, you know, and the market, okay, for the startups, products and services. It just happens so that I know that region very well, and a lot of companies I would assume from this specific region can go to the acceleration program to Dubai or to Saudi Arabia or to Bahrain or whatever. There are very good programs there.
You are on mute now. Andrei, you are on mute. No, still on mute.
There was an incoming call.
Yeah, it's okay.
So that's why. Also, the second thing that I didn't mention is that we are looking at the startups who are thinking globally. So again, by definition, they do have English-speaking, you know, member teams, team members on their rosters, and they have customers outside of the country. They have technology or strategic partners again on the other side of the border. So English-speaking sort of founder, it's a given thing. No, don't take me wrong. But having said that, it does not exclude, you know, cultural similarities and that help you to establish immediately a relationship with the people coming from this particular region. Okay, and it's an important thing. All the investors, not only in venture capital but in private equity area, would tell you right away that once you build a relationship on the right footing from the start, once you have good chemistry, that's a great contribution to the eventual sort of success of your relationship between the investor and the startup.
Okay, thank you very much. Another topic that I want to mention, I want to propose to discuss, it's about regulatory objections. So how works VC on common law, on English law? We know there is a practice. For example, Quest Ventures is Singapore-based company. Kolos Ventures, Andrei told based on Cyprus. So it is based on common law jurisdictions. So how do you think about the adaptation of Eurasian countries' legislatives to be maybe a little bit approach to near of English law? Is it crucial or not? This question may be for Ruslan, it's for you maybe, you have an experience.
Well, in terms of Kazakhstan, and actually it can be expanded to the whole Central Asia, Kazakhstan government done a very good job with introducing AFC, Astana International Financial Center, which is run by analogy of Dubai Financial Center, which use common law. They have their own incentives for entrepreneurs or entities or corporates to register in that zone. And we, as a Kazakhstan Digital Accelerator, we try to incorporate our investments in AFC. So we basically all who won a place in our portfolio through the acceleration program, we try to incorporate this deal and incorporate in AFC. For us, it's because we're building global stories, right? So for us, make a first step for the founders to form the whole deal in common law and try to promote their startups as in understandable to international investors jurisdiction is crucial, because Kazakhstan local law doesn't gives to founders, to the startups, enough flexibility and enough certainty for international investors to invest into LLP type of regulation in Kazakhstan. So yes, we try to do it in common law in AFC, but this is first up. And when the startup wants to expand, we try to incorporate HQ in different jurisdictions. For instance, it could be Singapore if startup moving to Southeast Asian markets. We have, for instance, Andrei will invest in our portfolio company, which will require Cayman, for instance, right? Startups need to be very flexible and do whatever it's needed to attract the investments from investors. So, but our first step is AFC. First step is common law. This became a normal already, because we're running Kazakhstan Digital Accelerator for second year. So we have second run this year, and we will have 3 runs next 3 years. So everything will be done in common law from the beginning.
Thank you. Maria, the question is for you about jurisdictions. In which countries, in which jurisdictions EBRD VC prefer to structure the deals?
Well, we also prefer the common law countries, and you know, of course it's very important to set up the legal framework in the countries, like Ruslan mentioned. But it's also important that the entrepreneurs would have enough trust to the government. Unfortunately, in our countries, it's often not the case. That's why it's very difficult to kind of, even if you have the perfect legislation, you know, that this legislation will actually work and would be enforceable in our countries. So therefore, like many entrepreneurs, then just they by themselves, they know that they need to establish a company somewhere outside. It's both for attracting investors, and the second is for protecting your IP rights and for basically putting your servers outside of the country. Unfortunately, this is like the reality that you have to, in order to survive and like to conform also with the legislation in global markets like in Europe and in America. It makes sense actually to have a country to have a company established in the Western country, or like in Eastern like Singapore or like Hong Kong. Hong Kong recently, not also, but before, and or Dubai, like UAE. And because we invest from Series A and onwards, most of the companies they already coming with an established company in the US. Majority, I would say, actually it's US, UK, Cyprus is the most common countries of establishing. I think maybe the only country that kind of falls out of, but it's not a part of our country discussion, is Turkey. In Turkey, actually, like we do direct investments in the Turkish companies, but mostly it's European Union and UK and US.
Okay, thank you very much. Andres, the same questions for you. Do you think that government should adapt regulation for VC and PE funds and structures?
No, definitely. If they want to develop a local investor base, that's inevitable development, inevitable. Maybe it's not the first priority. Like I'm coming from primarily Russian Federation. This legislation that is more or less resembling now the British or the US legislation with respect to the investment funds came into life in the beginning of the 2000s. But before that, you could hardly find similar structures similar to our LPs or SICAF, whatever fund structures that you can find right now in Europe or the US. People used to have mutual funds, closed-end mutual funds, which were not, I would say, comfortable structure in any sense for the investors. So it's a gradual process. What I'm driving at, it's a gradual process that you need to take one step at a time, depending on the development of the capital markets in your country, development of the investor base. So when the right time comes, that becomes inevitable. But probably it's not the first. The first priority for some of the countries that we're talking about, like Uzbekistan or Georgia or Azerbaijan, at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Maybe Kheyraddin, the point that we want to, at the end of our topic of discussion, maybe you will tell us about ecosystem of startups, investments, and venture in Azerbaijan. Is there players? What are the stakeholders? And what is the role of SOCAR on this ecosystem?
The thing is that, like, in this ecosystem, most of the times government started to newly interested in investment and startups, and even our president make a new order for this fund, so that even SOCAR twice a year make a report to the presidential administration about the innovation report and what the SOCAR done during these years. And of course, this kind of reports include by itself what the SOCAR's entities done and innovation and startup separately by each of them separately, and also all of them are being coordinated and being put together in our strategic department and sent preparing report and sent to the government. And of course, players of the venture capital ecosystem in Azerbaijan, most related not to the venture capitalists by itself, but to the innovation and startup separately, and companies by itself, like so there's some companies who already had an, let's say, support from EBRD and make a support from them and put some innovation startup and make it separately, and when after they done it, and they didn't even finish that startup and close it, and that comes from and end in there. But in the general, like such as in Kazakhstan or in Belarus or Russia, it's not mainly putting together together in some, let's say, companies which is already doing it for everyone. And the other problem in this situation is a lack of government regulations and jurisdictions in this situation. Due to that, Azerbaijan law do not include venture capital in it. It includes separately innovation, separately startup, separately private entities in it by law, but not venture capital. And because of that, each part of the investor who want to invest in any startup must do it by himself and must search for an let's say project, find it, invest it, and try to make it to till the end, and maybe in the future sell it. And the other problem in this situation is that, like, even if there's a start, you find a project, and yet an investor wanted to put money into that project or startup, innovation project or startup, the law and tax regulation do not also include in it that how it will be regulated when you put, let's say, some investment on that, and how I can need to pay taxes after getting, and let's say some gain after the project is finished. But generally, venture capital ecosystem started newly known everywhere, and even investors, even if we had them different, like angel investors by itself, or venture capitalists, investors who's separate to create a company and find an investor who want to invest in venture capital projects. And of course, after that one, they started to seeking for projects by themselves. Unfortunately, it's doing not a founder go to the investor and says, I had a project and let's do it. But venture capitalists by itself must have found someone who can do the project. And this is another problem in this issue. But as I mentioned before, as a country, we are new in this area, but hopes that in the future it will go beyond and even started to founded by government support or funded by the investors who's inside of a country or outside of a country.
Thank you very much, Kheyraddin. On this point, dear colleagues, dear panel speakers, we are at the end of our panel discussion. Thank you for StrategEast for organizing this panel discussion when we could change our opinions, our minds. So thank you very much. And if nobody have any questions, I propose to finish our panel discussions today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And goodbye. Thank you, StrategEast.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye.